For years, Roseanne Barr made shocking claims about powerful figures in entertainment and politics, often in language so extreme that many people dismissed her outright. Critics labeled her unstable, controversial, or conspiratorial, while supporters argued she was speaking uncomfortable truths long before the public was ready to hear them. As scandals surrounding elite social circles and the release of documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein gained wider attention, some audiences began revisiting Roseanne's past comments through a different lens. What made her statements stand out was not just their intensity, but the fact that she spoke as someone deeply embedded in Hollywood rather than an outsider speculating from afar. Roseanne wasn't merely another celebrity commenting on the industry. She had built one of the most successful sitcoms in American television history with Roseanne, a series that resonated with viewers because it portrayed working-class life in a way many felt mainstream television often ignored. Throughout her career, she became known for battling networks, executives, and creative control structures inside the entertainment business. Because of that history, supporters of her views argue that when she describes troubling experiences within Hollywood, she is speaking from first-hand exposure to elite social environments rather than relying on rumor. In interviews over the years, Roseanne has repeatedly claimed that abuse, exploitation, and manipulation were far more common within the entertainment world than the public realized. She has accused powerful people in the industry of protecting one another and maintaining silence around harmful behavior. One particularly disturbing story she shared involved what she described as the final Hollywood party she ever attended. According to her account, a major movie star allegedly arrived accompanied by a very young boy presented in a deeply inappropriate context. Roseanne said what shocked her most was not only the situation itself, but the reaction of everyone else in the room, or rather, the lack of one. She claimed the surrounding guests, many of them influential celebrities and executives, behaved as though nothing unusual was happening. In recounting the experience, Roseanne described feeling horrified and desperate to leave immediately. She said the incident deeply affected her perception of Hollywood culture and contributed to her desire to distance herself from that world entirely. To her supporters, stories like these reinforce the argument that certain forms of misconduct have long been quietly tolerated or ignored within elite entertainment circles. At the same time, many of Roseanne's broader claims remain unverified, highly controversial, or rooted in conspiracy-oriented interpretations rather than publicly established facts. Discussions surrounding Epstein and celebrity networks have fueled a climate where old interviews, rumors, and allegations are constantly re-examined online, often without clear distinctions between documented evidence and personal speculation. What remains undeniable is that public attitudes toward celebrity culture have shifted dramatically. Audiences today are far more skeptical of fame, influence, and institutional power than they were decades ago. Figures like Roseanne have become symbolic to some people not necessarily because every claim they make is proven, but because they reflect a growing distrust of elite systems and the secrecy often associated with wealth and influence. The broader conversation now extends beyond individual celebrities. It touches on questions about accountability, silence, complicity, and how industries built on image and reputation sometimes respond when insiders begin speaking publicly about experiences that challenge the narratives audiences were once encouraged to believe. According to Roseanne Barr, one experience at a Hollywood gathering affected her so deeply that she decided she could no longer remain part of that environment. She has described leaving the event in fear, saying she felt compelled to distance herself completely from the culture surrounding elite entertainment circles. Eventually, she relocated to Hawaii, explaining in interviews that she wanted to put as much physical and emotional distance as possible between herself and what she believed was happening behind closed doors in Hollywood. Roseanne's interpretation of those experiences goes beyond isolated misconduct. In her view, these environments functioned as systems of silence and mutual protection. She has argued that powerful social gatherings often operated less like ordinary parties and more like mechanisms for maintaining influence and loyalty. According to this perspective, simply witnessing questionable behavior could create pressure to remain silent, because anyone present became indirectly tied to what occurred there. This idea connects closely to broader public discussions surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and the network of wealthy, influential people associated with him. Critics of the mainstream narrative argue that Epstein's operation was never solely about one individual committing crimes in isolation. Instead, investigators and journalists who studied the case have described it as a larger network built around access, influence, and leverage over powerful people. Some reporting and commentary surrounding the case suggested Epstein cultivated compromising situations involving influential figures and maintained extensive records of social interactions, travel, and private gatherings. The broader theory discussed by many observers is that such systems rely not only on direct wrongdoing but also on silence, fear of exposure, and the protection that comes from mutual vulnerability among elites. Within entertainment culture specifically, some commentators argue that careers can become tied to compliance with powerful structures. They claim that individuals who cooperate with industry expectations often continue rising professionally, while those who openly challenge the system risk isolation or career damage. Whether exaggerated or not, this belief has become a recurring theme in discussions about Hollywood power dynamics. Roseanne has repeatedly framed her own career struggles through that lens. Over the years, she has publicly accused influential figures and institutions of suppressing dissenting voices while protecting established power networks. Unlike vague accusations, she often speaks in highly direct and confrontational terms, naming people she believes are connected to the culture she criticizes. One example she referenced involved a tense phone conversation with a major entertainment figure whom she believed was attempting to silence or intimidate her. To supporters, moments like that reinforce the image of Roseanne as someone unafraid to confront influential individuals directly. To critics, however, her claims often blend legitimate concerns about abuse of power with speculation and conspiracy-driven interpretations that remain unverified. What makes these discussions resonate today is the broader cultural climate. Public confidence in celebrity institutions has weakened considerably in recent years. Audiences are increasingly skeptical of carefully curated public images, especially after scandals involving abuse, exploitation, and secrecy emerged across entertainment, politics, and business. As more information connected to Epstein's network became public, many people began re-examining older interviews, celebrity relationships, and insider accounts through a more suspicious lens. Figures like Roseanne, once dismissed entirely by mainstream audiences, are now viewed by some as early critics of systems that the public only later began questioning more seriously. At the same time, it remains important to separate documented evidence from speculation. Many sweeping claims made online about Hollywood networks, secret coordination, or widespread criminal conspiracies go beyond what has been publicly proven. The challenge for audiences today is navigating the space between legitimate scrutiny of powerful institutions and narratives driven primarily by rumor, fear, or internet amplification. Over the years, Roseanne Barr has publicly mentioned a number of extremely influential figures while discussing what she believes are hidden power structures within entertainment, politics, and global elite culture. Among the names she has referenced are Oprah Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Lady Gaga, Bill Gates, and Ellen DeGeneres. Rather than presenting legal evidence or formal accusations, Roseanne frames her commentary as an attempt to question relationships, influence, and patterns she believes mainstream institutions avoid discussing openly. What gives her comments attention is not necessarily proof, but perspective. Roseanne speaks as someone who spent decades inside Hollywood at the highest level of television success. Supporters argue that her experiences in elite social circles give her observations a different kind of credibility, even when her claims move into controversial or speculative territory. She often suggests that entertainment power structures extend far beyond studios or celebrity culture alone, involving connections to political, financial, and even international elite networks. In many interviews, Roseanne has described private gatherings among wealthy and influential people as environments where power is reinforced through secrecy, exclusivity, and silence. Her comments imply that these social spaces operate according to rules unfamiliar to the general public. While critics dismiss these ideas as conspiratorial exaggeration, her supporters believe she is exposing uncomfortable realities about how influence and protection operate among elites. One figure Roseanne repeatedly focuses on is Ellen DeGeneres. In her view, Ellen symbolized more than just a television personality. She represented a carefully crafted public image built around warmth, kindness, and relatability. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen's daytime brand encouraged audiences to associate celebrity culture with positivity and generosity. But after workplace allegations surrounding her show surfaced, critics began reassessing whether that image reflected reality behind the scenes. Roseanne has argued that Ellen's downfall was not simply the result of being labeled a difficult boss. She points out that Hollywood has historically tolerated abusive or intimidating behavior from many powerful figures for years without ending their careers. From that perspective, she believes Ellen's exit from daytime television may have involved larger industry calculations rather than just public backlash over workplace culture. However, these interpretations remain speculative and are not supported by publicly verified evidence. Roseanne's rhetoric often becomes especially intense when discussing these subjects. She has used terms like Satan's army, vampires, and other highly symbolic or spiritual language to describe what she views as corrupt systems of power. Some listeners interpret those phrases literally, while others see them as metaphors for greed, exploitation, moral decay, or elite manipulation. regardless of interpretation. The consistent theme in her commentary is the belief that powerful institutions protect themselves through loyalty, silence, and control over public narratives. For years, those statements pushed Roseanne further toward the margins of mainstream entertainment. After the collapse of her television revival in 2018, many people viewed her as a cautionary example of someone who had become too controversial for the industry to tolerate. Critics argued she had crossed lines repeatedly with inflammatory comments, while supporters believed she was punished for challenging powerful systems and refusing to remain silent. What has changed in recent years is the broader public atmosphere. The release of documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein, combined with growing distrust of institutions and celebrity culture, has led more people to revisit once-dismissed conversations about elite influence and hidden networks. Audiences today are far more skeptical than they were a decade ago, and that skepticism has created space for controversial figures like Roseanne to find renewed attention. At the same time, it remains essential to separate documented facts from interpretation and speculation. Public association, social connections, or inclusion in discussions online do not automatically establish criminal behavior or conspiracy. Much of the discourse surrounding celebrity networks now exists in a blurred space where legitimate scrutiny, personal testimony, internet rumor, and speculation often overlap. Ultimately, the larger story reflects a cultural shift in how people view fame and power. Trust in celebrity institutions has weakened, audiences are more willing to question polished public images, and conversations once dismissed outright are now examined with far greater seriousness, even when definitive answers remain elusive. As more records connected to Jeffrey Epstein become public, online investigators, journalists, and curious observers have increasingly begun comparing flight logs, guest lists, social connections, and public statements made by influential figures over the years. For many people following the story, the focus has expanded beyond Epstein himself to the broader social environments that allowed powerful individuals to interact privately for decades with little public scrutiny. According to Roseanne Barr, the most important part of the story was never just Epstein's island. In her view, the deeper issue lies in the exclusive dinners, private gatherings, and elite social circles where relationships were built long before the world ever heard about the island. She argues that these settings created networks of influence, loyalty, and silence that operated quietly behind celebrity culture and public image management. Roseanne often frames this as a system built on distraction. She has suggested that the public is constantly overwhelmed with entertainment, political conflict, and media spectacle while more significant power dynamics remain hidden in the background. In her interpretation, celebrity culture itself functions as part of that distraction, keeping audiences focused on surface-level drama while avoiding deeper questions about influence, privilege, and accountability. She also believes that individuals who publicly challenge these structures are often punished quickly and aggressively. Roseanne has repeatedly described her own cancellation from mainstream television as an example of that process. In her view, the backlash against her was not only about controversial statements she made publicly, but also about the broader threat she posed by speaking openly about elite networks and Hollywood culture. Supporters of Roseanne point to the speed and intensity of the response to her controversies as evidence that the entertainment industry moves decisively when someone becomes too unpredictable or difficult to control. Critics, however, argue that her downfall resulted primarily from inflammatory remarks and behavior that major networks and advertisers no longer wanted associated with their brands. The debate over her treatment has therefore become part of a larger conversation about free speech, institutional power, and how industries manage public image. What gives Roseanne renewed attention today is the changing cultural landscape surrounding Epstein-related investigations. Years ago, many discussions about elite networks and hidden misconduct were dismissed outright as fringe speculation. But as court documents, testimonies, and investigative reporting exposed genuine abuses connected to powerful individuals, public skepticism toward celebrity and institutional authority grew substantially. Roseanne's supporters argue that some of the patterns she described, secrecy, mutual protection among elites, and silence in the face of disturbing behavior, now seem less implausible to the general public than they once did. Even if many of her specific claims remain unverified or controversial, broader concerns about how wealth and influence can shield misconduct have become far more mainstream. The central idea in her commentary is not simply that individual bad actors exist, but that systems of power can encourage silence and self-protection. According to this perspective, private social spaces among influential people become important because they create relationships, obligations, and vulnerabilities that are largely invisible to outsiders. At the same time, it remains crucial to distinguish between documented evidence and speculation. Public association with Epstein or attendance at elite events does not automatically imply criminal behavior or participation in wrongdoing. Much of the online discussion surrounding these issues blends verified facts with assumptions, internet theories, and interpretations that go far beyond what has been conclusively established. Still, the broader cultural shift is undeniable. Audiences are now far more willing to question celebrity institutions, challenge carefully crafted public images, and examine how power operates behind the scenes. Figures like Roseanne, once dismissed entirely by mainstream audiences, are increasingly viewed by some as voices who identified aspects of that culture long before public opinion began changing. Ultimately, the story reflects a growing demand for transparency and accountability from people and institutions that once seemed untouchable. Whether one agrees with Roseanne's conclusions or not, the conversations surrounding Epstein, elite networks, and Hollywood culture have permanently altered how many people view fame, influence, and the systems that protect them.